Y'all. You know what time it is. Woo! Get into it! Get into it! Yes! We're back with Storytime with Chris. Yes, it's a little bit dark behind me because unfortunately my lamp bulb has gone out. So I have to go later to go buy a new light bulb. So that's why it may seem a little bit dark in the background. But it kind of is appropriate for how gloomy and mysterious the previous chapter was for our last time we were here for the Black Culture. I know I'm a bit early, but I just wanted to do it early. And, you know, if you all are around at 7:30, you'll have this video to view at your own time. Like I always say, you don't have to watch these videos when they go live. You're more than welcome to watch them in your downtime, nap time, in-between time, max and chillax and relaxing time. Storytime with Chris is non-profit. I don't do this for a profit. This is my love and passion for people getting interested in the magic of literature and reading, especially children, because reading is not just fundamental, it is essential. And no, I do not own the music you're listening to the background, which is brought to you by my favorite, Mr. Ambiance. Please check them out on YouTube, subscribe, like, and share, and please show them some love. Also, if you did not know, I do have a YouTube channel. The link is within my bio, so please like, share, and subscribe. Please share with your friends. It only takes less than 3 seconds, and I appreciate each and every one who supports, whether it's viewing these videos or subscribing. I appreciate all of it. Thank you so much. Now, get my glasses, and we will go ahead and begin with the final chapter of the Black Culture. Chapter 20. The Final Price. Eladir, Tard cried, have you strength enough to break your bonds and free the rest of us? Eladir rolled on his side and strained desperately against the tight cords. The bard and Tard tried to aid him, but at last Eladir fell back, exhausted and gasping with the pain of his efforts. Too much of my strength is gone, he murmured. I fear Morgant has given me my death wound. I can do no more. The curtain blew open again. An instant later, Taran was flung full length and roughly spun around. He kicked wildly with his bound legs and tried to right himself. Stop struggling, you clot! A voice shouted at his ear. Dolly? Taran's heart leaped. Is it you? Clever question, snapped the voice. Stop trying to fight me. Things are hard enough without you squirming. Whoever tied these knots, I wish he had them about his neck. Taran felt firm hands drawing at the thongs of rope. Dolly, how did you come here? Don't bother with me with silly chatter, growled the dwarf. Taran felt a knee jabbing into the small of his back as Dolly took a better grip on the bonds. Can't you see I'm busy? Muttered the dwarf. No, of course you can't, but that doesn't matter. Drat, if I hadn't lost my axe, I'd be through this in no time. Oh, my ears, I've never stayed invisible so long at one go. Hornets! Wasps! Suddenly, the rope parted. Taran sat up and began as best he could to unbind his legs. In another moment, Dolly himself flashed into sight and set about freeing the bard. The stout dwarf was grimy, muddy, and his ears were tinged bright blue. Dolly stopped his exertions to clap his hands to his head. Enough invisibility is enough, he cried. No need for it here. Not yet. Bumblebees! A whole hive of them in my ears! How did you ever find us? Cried Ilanwi, as the dwarf ripped away her bonds. If you must know, the dwarf snapped impatiently, I didn't find you. Not at first. I found Eladir. Saw him coming up from the river a little before Morgan reached him. I was on my way to Caer Cauldron after I shook off the huntsman to get away and get help from Gwydion. I didn't dare waste time chasing through the marshes after you. Eladir had the cauldron, and your horses, too. That got my suspicions up, so I went invisible and followed him on foot. As soon as I understood what had happened, I turned back to look for you. My pony had run off. Dratted beast. We never liked each other, and you got here ahead of me. The dwarf knelt and untied Gurgi, who began to show some signs of life but hesitated when he came to Eladir. What about this one? Dolly asked. I have an idea he's better off as he is, he added gruffly. I know what he tried to do. Eladir raised his head. Taran met his glance and gestured quickly to Dolly. Free him, Taran ordered. Dolly paused, doubtful. Taran repeated his words. The dwarf shook his head and shrugged. If you say so, he muttered, setting to work on Elidir's bonds. While Eilonwe chafed Gurgi's wrists, the bard hurried to the tent flap and cautiously peered out. Taran searched vainly for weapons. I can see Morgant, Fluter called. He's on his way here. Well, he shall have a surprise. We are unarmed, Taran cried. They far outnumber us and can slay us at their pleasure. Rip up the back of the tent, Dolly exclaimed. Make a run for it through the forest. And leave the corkshin in Morgant's hands? Replied Taran. No, that we dare not do. Elidir had risen to his feet. I am not strength enough to break my own bonds, he said, but I can still serve you. Before Taran could stop him, Elidir plunged from the tent. The guards shouted the alarm. Taran saw Morgant fall back in astonishment, then draw his sword. Slay him, Morgant commanded. Slay him! Keep him from the cauldron! With the bard and Dolly at his heels, Taran raced from the tent and flung himself against King Morgant, fighting furiously to wrest the sword from the warlord's hands. With a savage snarl, Morgant caught him by the throat and tossed him to the ground, then turned to pursue Elidir. The horsemen had broken ranks and hastened to close upon the running figure. Taran scrambled to his feet. Ahead he saw Elidir grappling fiercely with one of the warriors, fighting as he had never fought before. The Prince of Penlarkar, Taran knew, was calling on all the strength remaining to him. Elidir threw the warrior down, but faltered and cried out as the man's sword thrust deep into his side. Clutching the wound, Elidir stumbled ahead. No! No! Taran shouted. Elidir, save yourself! A few paces from the cauldron, struggling madly, Elidir broke free of the warriors. Then with a cry, he flung himself into the corkshin's gaping mouth. The corkshin shuddered like a living thing. In horror and dismay, Taran cried out again to Elidir. He fought his way toward the cauldron, but in another instant a sharp clap louder than thunder rang above the clearing. The leafless trees trembled to their roots. The branches writhed as if in agony. Then wild echoes ripped through the air and a whirlwind screamed overhead. The cauldron split and shattered. The jagged shards fell away from the lifeless form of Elidir. A war host burst from the thicket. Astride it rode King Smoit, a naked sword in his fist, a shout of battle on his lips. Behind the red-headed king streamed mounted warriors who plunged against the men of Morgant. In the press of combat, Taran glimpsed a white steed galloping to the charge. Gwydion! Taran shouted and struggled to reach his side. He caught sight of Cole then the stout old warrior drawn his sword and struck mightily about him. Gwistel, with Caw clinging to his shoulder, dashed into the fray. Bellowing with rage, King Smoit drove straight for Morgant. He raised his sword and lashed viciously at the rearing steed. Smoit leaped to the ground. Two of Morgant's warriors threw themselves in front of him to defend their lord, but Smoit cut them down with powerful blows and strode past. Eyes unhooded and blazing, his teeth bared, Morgant fought savagely amid the shattered pieces of the cauldron, as though he sought defiantly to claim them. His sword had broken under the force of Smoit's attack, yet he slashed and thrust again, and again with the jagged blade, the grimace of hatred and arrogance frozen upon his features, his hand still clutching at the blood-stained weapon. Even as he fell, Morgant's riders had been slain or captured, as Gwydion's voice rose in command to cease the combat. Taran stumbled to Elidir's side and tried to raise him. He bowed his head in grief. The black beast is gone from you, Prince of Penlarkar, he murmured. A high-pitched whinny behind him made Taran run. It was Islomak, who had broken her tether and now stood over the body of her master. The rowan lifted her lean, bony head, tossed her mane, spun about, and galloped from the clearing. Taran, understanding the frenzied look in the rowan's eyes, cried out and ran after her. Islomak plunged through the undergrowth. Taran strove to overtake her and seize the hanging bridle, but the rowan sped onward to the ravine. She did not check her speed even at the brink. Islomak made a mighty leap, hung poised in the air a moment, then plummeted to the rocks below. Taran covered his face with his hands and turned away. And I'm just going to pause here momentarily. That's heartache. Animals can feel heartache and loss just as much as humans do. And that's why Islomak did what she did. Because she loved Elidir, her master, so very much. And no matter how cruel he was, that was her master. That was her best friend. That was her lifeline. Just wanted to pause to clarify, because heartbreak is very real, even for creatures of the earth, just as much as it is for humans. In the clearing, the bodies of King Morgat and Eladir lay side by side, and the remainder of King Smoit's horsemen rode in a slow, mournful circle around them. Alone and apart, Gwydion leaned heavily on the black sword Durnwyn, his shaggy head bent, his weathered face filled with sorrow. Taran drew near and stood silently. At length Gwydion spoke. "Fluder has told me all that befell you. My heart is grieved that Cole and I found you only now. Yet, without King Smoit and his warriors, I fear we might not have prevailed. He grew impatient and came seeking us. Had I been able to send him word, I would have summoned him long before this. I am grateful to him for his impatience. And you too, Assistant Pigkeeper," he added. "The Corkchin is destroyed, and with it Aurorn's power to add to the number of his Cauldron born. It is one of the gravest defeats Aurorn has ever suffered, but I know the price you paid." "It is Eladir who paid the final price," Taran said slowly. "The last honor belongs to him." He spoke then of Islamak. "He has lost all else, even his steed." "Or perhaps gained all," Gwydion answered, "and his honor shall be certain. We shall raise a barrow to his memory. Islamak too shall rest with him, for they are both now at peace. Smoit's dead shall also sleep in honor, and a barrow be raised above King Morgat of Madoc." "Morgat?" Taran asked, turning a puzzled glance to Gwydion. "How can there be honor for such a man?" "It is easy to judge evil unmixed," replied Gwydion, "but alas, in most of us, good and bad are closely woven as the threads on a loom. Greater wisdom than mine is needed for the journeying and the judging. King Morgan served the Sons of Dawn long and well," he went on, "until the thirst for power parched his throat. He was a fearless and noble lord. In battle he saved my life more than once. These things are part of him and cannot be put aside or forgotten. And so shall I honor Morgant," Gwydion said, "for what he used to be, and Eladir, Prince of Pinlarkar, for what he became." Near the tents of Morgan, Taran found the companions again. Under Eilonwe's care, Gurgi had recovered from the guard's blow and looked only a little shaken. "Poor tender head is filled with breakings and achings," Gurgi said with a wan smile at Taran. "He is sad not to fight at side of kindly master. He would have struck down wicked warriors, oh yes."
"There's been more than enough fighting," Eilonwe said. "I found your sword again," she added, handing the weapon to Taran. "But sometimes I wish Dolben hadn't given it to you in the first place. It's bound to lead you to trouble."
"Oh, I should think our troubles are over," put in Fluter, cradling his injured arm. "The beastly old kettle is smashed to bits. Thanks to Eladir," he went on sadly. "The bards shall sing of our deeds and of his." "I don't care about that," grumbled Dolly, rubbing his ears, which had only now begun to return to their natural color. "I just don't want anyone, not even Gwydion, dreaming up another scheme to have me turn invisible." "Good old Dolly," Taran said. "The more you grumble, the more pleased you are with yourself."
"Good old Dolly,"
replied the dwarf. "Humph." That's his mad face. But he's really happy. Taran caught sight of Cole and King Smoit resting beneath an oak. Cole had taken off his close-fitting helmet, and though bruised and slashed, his face beamed and his bald head glowed with pleasure. As he put an arm around Taran's shoulders, "We did not meet as soon as I expected," Cole said with a wink, "for I hear you were busy with other things." "My body and blood!" roared Smoit, giving Taran a clap on the back. "You look like a skinned rabbit last time I saw you. Now the rabbit is gone, and only the skin and bones are left." A loud squawk interrupted the red-bearded king. In surprise, Taran turned and saw Gwistel sitting alone and morose. On his shoulder, Ka hopped up and down and bobbed his head in delight. "So it's you again," Gwistel remarked, sighing heavily. As Taran hurried over, "Well, you shan't blame me for what's happened. I warned you. However, what's done is done. There's no sense in complaining. No sense in it at all." "You shall not deceive me again, Gwistel of the Fair Folk," Taran said. "I know who you are and the valiant service you have rendered." Ka croaked joyfully as Taran smoothed his feathers and scratched him under the beak. "Go on," Gwistel said. "Put him on your shoulder. That's what he wants. For the matter of that, you shall have him as a gift, with the thanks of the fair folk. For you have done us a great service, too. We were uneasy with the corkchin knocking about here and there. One never knew what would happen." Yes, pick him up," Gwistel added with a melancholy sigh. "He's taken quite a fancy to you. He just as well. I'm simply not up to keeping crows anymore. Not up to it at all." "Tarn!" croaked Ka. "Though I warn you again," Gwistel went on, "pay no attention to him. Most of the time he talks just to hear himself talk, like some others I could mention. The secret is, don't listen. No use in it, no use whatsoever." After they had raised the barrows, Gwistel left to resume his guard at the waypost. The companions, King Smoit and his riders, departed from the clearing and turned their horses toward the river Averin. High overhead, their wings darkening the sky, flight after flight of Gwithates retreated toward Anuvin. Of the huntsman, there was no sign. And Gwydion believed that Aurora, learning of the Corkshin's destruction, had summoned them to return. The companions rode not in triumph joy, but slowly and thoughtfully. The heart of King Smoy, too, was heavy, for he had suffered the loss of many warriors. With Ka perched on his shoulder, Taran rode beside Gwydion at the head of the column as it wound through hills rich with autumn colors. For a long while Taran did not speak. "It is strange," he said at last. "I longed to enter the world of men. Now I see it is filled with sorrow, with cruelty and treachery, with those who would destroy all around them." "Yet enter it you must," Gwydion answered, "for it is a destiny laid on each of us. True, you have seen these things, but there are equal parts of love and joy. Think of Adion, and believe this. Think, too, of your companions. Out of friendship for you, they would have given up all they valued, indeed, all they possessed." Taran nodded. "I see now the price I paid was the least of all. For the brooch was never truly mine. I wore it, but it was no part of me. I am thankful I kept it as long as I did. At least I know, for a little while, how a bard must feel and what it means to be like to be a hero." "That is why your sacrifice was all the more difficult," Gwydion said. "You chose to be a hero, not through enchantment, but through your own manhood. And since you have chosen for good or ill, you must take the risks of a man. You may win or you may lose. Time will decide." They had come to the valley of Yestrad, and here Gwydion reined up the gold-maned steed. "Melangar and I must now return to Cerdathel," he said, "and bring word to King Math. You shall tell Dalbin all that has happened. Indeed, this time you know more of these events than I." "Go swiftly," Gwydion said, reaching out his hand. "Your comrades wait for you. And Cole, I know, is eager to ready his vegetable garden for winter. Farewell, Taran, assistant pig-keeper and friend." Gwydion waved once and rode northward. Taran watched until he was out of sight. He turned Melalas then and saw the faces of the companions smiling at him.
"Hurry along," Eilonwy cried. "Henwin will be waiting her bath, and I'm afraid Gurgi and I left in such a hurry I didn't take time to straighten up the scullery. That's worse than starting a journey and forgetting to put your shoes on."
Taran galloped toward them. And that is the end of The Black Cauldron. Now I'm going to show you the next book that's in that series, so hold on one sec. Okay, so one would say that this is a female protagonist focused volume. I would say that it's a story centered around mostly Ailanwi. And she's amazing. Gotta give it up to the girls. Everybody needs to feel represented, and it's a good thing. No matter what form it comes in, everybody should, in most cases, feel and be seen and represented. So the next book, The Castle of Lear. Yeah, there's Ailanwe, and a familiar character for those who were here for the first book, the Book of Three. So, Book of Three was the introduction to the main cast and the world of Prydain. Book 2 is the first adventure of the main cast. And then now, we're going to be looking at the backstory and further history of Ailanwe, and of course, Taran, Gurgi, and all of our wonderful friends, more than likely, will be joining along. But if you know this woman, you know who that is if you were here for the first book, okay? I'm excited because there's going to be more magic in this story. But as always, y'all, I will see you all next time. Have a great night. Bye-bye now.